Welcome to Roadmap to Retirement. Tune in for financial tips, investment strategies, and smart money moves to supercharge your retirement savings. Alex Neri, CFP, and guests are here to help you build your roadmap to retirement.
All right, welcome back to the Roadmap to Retirement podcast. This week we're enjoying some nice Sly Move from the Strangebird Brewery. Thank you to them for making this wonderful beer, and I'm joined by Chris. Chris, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Okay, Alex. My name is Chris Haigh. I own a independent financial advisory, RIA, it's called, in Rochester, New York. We're one of the few, I'd say one of 5 boutique, independently owned firms in the area that we specialize in, like a white glove service model, boutique, I guess they would call it, with our clients. So we serve roughly about 100 families in the Rochester, New York area, like a high-level service model, but didn't start there. We've been doing that for about 4 years when we started the firm. Previously was at Northwestern Mutual for 8 to 9 years. I started my career there at age 20. That's where I met. What year was that?
Yeah, so that's
we were in college. Like
maybe that's a good spot to start today.
Yeah.
So I met you in 2012. We were both in college at the time.
Okay. Was it that long ago? Okay.
Yeah, so 12 years ago, we did the internship program at Northwestern. That's where I met you and a lot of other people that I'm still somehow in touch with today.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And it's cool to see yourself and other people evolve in this career and get to where you are now. And I think to bring it back to why we're here today, I think we're inspired because we have some similar feelings on, I don't know, I hesitate to call it competition in our industry, but the other people that could be perceived to do what we do.
Yeah.
So the idea of today's podcast is to try to give our listeners maybe a starting point for how to select a financial advisor and how to differentiate between the different types of advisors that exist out there.
Yeah, I think we're really suffering from an identity issue right now in our space, where if you're a client, if you're somebody who's not really in tune with our industry, which nobody is, right? They don't know the difference between somebody at, let's say they're affiliated with Ameriprise or LPL or a Northwestern Mutual or like an Equitable, but all those places are so different. But what I found is that everyone is so quick at the advisor level to, I almost get like arm's length away from the brand. This is my planning group, XYZ planning group, or last name, fill it in here, planning group, and try to immediately disassociate with the bigger entity of Northwestern Mutual, Equitable, because they don't have, I don't think, a trusting brand name as much anymore. And they want to hold themselves out as being different, as being unique, but they're all the same. If that makes sense. But it's so hard for a client to understand the difference.
Right.
You know?
It allows them to separate from that larger firm. So like in the AXA Equitable world, the last time I knew, they have something called a producer group. So a producer group is a way for you to label yourself and brand yourself different from the bigger firm, which in a way is good. And I can see from the advisor standpoint, it allows them to market better and build their own identity within this larger firm. The problem from the client side is it creates an illusion that they don't have the same issues that might exist at that larger firm.
Yeah, and it's not, it's misleading. I would say, to be transparent, it's not. I don't think it's intentionally misleading, but it's a huge issue that I don't think that they realize that they're perpetuating, where they don't hold themselves out as representative of these firms. And just from my own experience knowing at Northwestern Mutual, it was like you would do anything possible to not be associated with that name. You know what I mean? And that's harmful to the client because people would say, I'm licensed by Northwestern Mutual, but I have my own business. It's completely, agnostic from them, when it's not at all, because all of your compensation is tied to them. This large invisible hand that's guiding you to be selling their products more so than others, because you are licensed to sell any other firm, really, like Guardian, Mass Mutual. You can sell their insurance through Northwestern, but you never do because none of your bonuses are tied to it. And all the things where this stupid piece of paper in the kitchen, the shared kitchen at the office, shows all the rankings of sales, and people care way more about that than they do the end user, which is the client, which I think can be really damaging.
Yeah, in the AXA world, and I'm not here to talk about them exclusively, but there was the proprietary stuff, and it was common knowledge that you could use anything else you wanted, and you would tell your clients that you could use any other fund. You weren't, tied or handcuffed to any proprietary thing. But to your point, if you wanted to qualify for your 401k match, you want to get your health insurance benefits, you want to be on those rankings in the office, or you wanted to win the annual trip and go on a cruise and have the company pay for it, all of a sudden you need to be selling the XYZ fund from the XYZ company.
Yeah, and I tend to always say with a grain of salt, it's really, I don't think from the advisor perspective, It's not intentionally misleading. I don't think a lot of people know that they're doing it, but that's even worse. I would say health insurance benefits, like you're talking livelihood of someone in their families. Yeah. And that's really, sounds illegal, to be honest. Like at this point.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You got 3 kids to feed and whatever, and their health insurance will be taken away if you don't sell this annuity product or this whole life insurance policy.
Yeah, that's pretty absurd. And yeah, it just really makes me angry. Equitable's a big culprit of this, especially in the 403B space, which is why I think we started this conversation in general.
Yeah, this conversation came about because you'd expressed some feelings about their 403B product, and I'm unfortunately very familiar with that. And I think it's take a step back within the public school space. There's a provider list of different 403B options you can use. There's a provider list is usually 12 to 15 different options. AXA has always been one of the top providers on that list in terms of most utilized account or most used account. And I think people mistake that for it being the best account or a good account even. In reality, it's just that they have a very polished sales system to get as many teachers to sign up for their product as possible. And you have some feelings on maybe the performance or cost of that.
Yeah, like of that. Yeah, I guess to take it a step back further, it's a huge, I would say it's like one of the most overlooked like epidemics that exists right now in this space would be public educators. Specifically, we can talk mostly about, I think, New York State. I think it exists beyond that too, but I think that's one we're most familiar with is you have this list of providers. They all suck for the most part. There's maybe one good one, which is Aspire, which we can use as like independent RIAs to move the funds and charge zero. We can charge anything like a fixed
even Aspire
fee.
still sucks.
And their platform sucks. Yeah, I would say, but at least like the fund options are decent. You can provide the service that people think they're getting, but they're actually not. Whereas with an Equitable, you have someone who's, and it's usually, I would say the school districts are like equally culpable because they have these, I don't know if they're agreements, you might be able to speak to this more, but it's usually 1 or 2 people who are in the districts who have kind of these handshake agreements or old boys club. They've been there forever. And then all the existing teachers use them, and to no fault of their own, they don't really know that they're being ripped off. And then they're recommending to new teachers, like, oh, this is the guy that I use. He's like, the bar is so low. Like he's nice. He comes in and he drives a nice car and he shows up. Like that's pretty much the only prerequisite we need. And they have no idea that they're like one of the biggest, I would say, like destroyers of wealth that exists right now in that space. Is they're charging astronomical fees for annuities that, talking about public educators who have a large source of their retirement income is coming from a guaranteed defined benefit source. Why do they need an annuity is beyond me. And they're paying, I've had some of the numbers here, like 1.2, what's the number? Like, let's see, 1.2%, 1% on top of that. They're paying between, I've seen it as bad as like over 3% per year in fees for, I don't know what they're getting.
Exactly. Yeah, it's absurd. It's absurdly expensive. And the other problem with it too is like not transparent at all.
No.
So we talked about Aspire, and like I'm not here to talk about Aspire for too long, but like they're not a pro platform either. But what they do is you can have an advisory model where you're charging an advisory fee in the account, and that's printed on the statement. Client gets a statement in the mail, or they log it online. They can see exactly what they're being charged.
Yep.
Good luck trying to find it on your Equitable statement. You will not find the fee. You have to really dig into all that legal documents that you signed originally to find out what the M&E charge is, what is an M&E charge, what are the fund expenses. And yeah, somebody like us that's educated in this stuff can add it up and find out that you're probably between 2 to 2.5%, maybe even 3 in some cases, depending on which funds you choose. So it's astronomically expensive. I think the one thing that they do well is they do help people get started saving early, which is kind of a backwards logic thing because it's a result of them being so aggressive and going out and signing up every new teacher that exists. But the good news is at least you are saving for retirement, even if you're not doing it in the best way possible.
Yeah, there is a gap of a firm like ours is not going to realistically be able to work with a new teacher anymore and help them
banging down the door to work with somebody that has no money.
If someone came to us and was like, hey, could you help me out? We would spend the time with them to be nice, but it's really not somebody we would engage on and call and follow up with. So yeah, to that point, at least they're saving money, but I don't know if that is, it's definitely not enough to justify it, but there's got to be a better way to figure this out. And I think that's a goal of ours as a firm, as a team going forward, is around awareness in our space of the fee-only fiduciary world and kind of, you mentioned earlier, like competition, but I don't really see it as competition, whereas if your firm and mine, it's really, if we can make more awareness about our space and the benefits that we bring to it, that's more beneficial to me than taking one of your clients or vice versa, right? Where I'd rather have more firms in our space to bring awareness to this model so that more people could then utilize it.
Right.
And,
No, that makes a lot of
have
sense.
access to us.
That's part of the reason I want to have other advisors like yourself on the podcast and share. I don't look at it as competition. I don't think of you as competition. It's like the more clients out there that can find their way to working with a good advisor that knows what he's doing or she's doing, the better. And I don't have time. You don't have time to work with everybody in the greater Rochester area. So we need to make more awareness of what the options are out there so they can find their way to an advisor that's actually going to help them and not just overcharge them.
I do have questions about that a little bit if you're willing to talk about previous experience was. So is it district dependent? Is it you have certain ones that are certain people already have a stranglehold on them? How does that work from like a contractual agreement? Because it seems like some school districts are pretty well entrenched with certain people and others aren't. Like, I don't know if you can speak.
Yeah, do you mean like they're entrenched with one company or do you
like one person, advisor? One company?
Yeah, so I can tell you like there's a bit of a battle for companies in the first point to get themselves on the provider list.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of stuff happening behind the scenes. I don't know specifically, but I'm sure you can pay the district or make some kind of financial contribution to get your company on the list. I know that when I was at AXA, they sponsored some of the different unions. So you would be the sponsor of the administrators union. And obviously that comes with certain probably unwritten benefits. As far as like the individual districts, when I was in that space, you would have certain advisors that would be assigned to each district. So you might have so-and-so new advisor starts, 22-year-old, and you assign them to whatever Brighton school district. And their job is to go out there and sign up all the new people at Brighton, in theory. So that's how they work it behind the scenes. But once you're in as a company, I think you really have an opportunity to refer around all the new people and go in and say, go back to your current clients or somebody that's been working with this company for a while and say, oh, who's starting new this year? And then somebody can blast out an email to the 15 new people in the district and you're hoping to sign them up for the 403B.
And they're getting access to the 15 new people's contact information.
Yeah, so it's not generally coming from the district. Like most districts are smart enough not to hand that over.
Sure.
But it's pretty easy to figure out. Like every school district, just like every business, has like a formula for the email address. Ours at 6 Point is first initial, last name at 6pointfp.com, and every school district does something similar. So if you know their name and school district they work at, it's pretty easy to email them. And then they do this bait and switch thing where they email them and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. I work for this company. We're in charge of helping you with your benefits. So you can make it sound like you're being plugged in to help
you're
them.
like the HR person or something like that. It's part of your onboarding and
And I've asked like young teachers why they choose to work with this company, and usually the answer is somewhere like, oh, they're free or they're through the district.
Sure.
And they're absolutely not free, and no, the district is not truly endorsing them. And I think the districts have to be careful to make sure that's clear.
Yeah. I wonder, is anyone trying to advocate on their behalf and helping awareness around this, or is everyone got an agenda?
Just you and me. I don't want to say everybody has an agenda. There are some people that have been specializing and working with public school employees for a long time. They probably do legitimately do real financial planning, and that's great. But I don't know what percentage of the time I'm actually seeing that.
Even if, that's the sad thing, because even if they don't do actual financial planning, we know the person at Equitable is not, right? Sure, maybe they are, but no, they're not. Even if someone were to come in and say, hey, you're paying so much for this product that you can easily get for a lower cost, like how is that, like how is it so difficult, or how has it been such a like shouting into the air? I don't even
well, no, I think part of the problem is that provider list we said a few minutes ago, they all suck, and that's definitely true. So it's almost like they all maybe don't do a great job, so this one is the one that's knocking your door and saying, hey, here I am. So even if a teacher was willing to put in the time to go find another company, chances are if they pick one of the other 11 companies on the provider list, they also have some pretty big flaws.
Sure.
And there's not a lot of independent financial advisors like us that are looking to work with the 22-year-old new teacher that has no money. It's just not really a profitable venture.
It begs the question of how to make it work, or how, like, at what point does it become either a passion project or something that you just start advocating more for? Where, because I would like to be able to spend the time, and I think maybe at some point we could get to that point where we're like, hey, we'll do it pro bono just to set this up so no one gets screwed over. But from an administrative standpoint, it's still a time suck.
And that's from a compliance standpoint. Then there's however many more people you're responsible for that you're really not getting paid on, or maybe you do it completely outside of your system. You just direct them how to sign up on their own, kind of like an automatic enrollment type system.
And then even there's so much friction on if someone agrees, okay, hey, I have this equitable account, I'm going to keep using them because they're the worst. But I just have a lot of experience with it right now of, okay, hey, I agree, I'm going to change from equitable to this new provider. The hoops you have to jump through are just like astronomical. It takes so long, like the amount of time that you have to spend. And I'll tell people in the front end, it'll probably take us 4 attempts on the phone to get a hold of somebody, and then they're going to mail you. They have to mail you a form in the mail because it has to have a specific barcode at the bottom that's tagged to you specifically. That's the reason. And then once you get those forms in the mail, you have to probably get it either notarized or you have to bring it to the bank to have some sort of signature guarantee because you're an annuity product. You don't even realize that you're in, which has the kind of like the spousal waiver that has to get notarized. And then you have to mail it back with other paperwork. And then inevitably, I don't know anyone who's gotten it right the first try. They'll come back and deny it and say your transfer cannot be processed because you missed this thing that we never told you had to do. And then you just start it over again.
Yeah, it's also, by the way, you skip the step where you have to call with the client on the line to get the form mailed out in the first place. And
exactly.
To serve their business. And they ask, why are you leaving? These features and benefits. And they get aggressive trying to conserve the business, which I think is a bad look for them. I can't imagine that works at all.
It's a really bad look if you know how to. We've gotten to the point where we've done this so much that I'll tell them exactly what is going to be said in the phone call. And when it happens, it's almost sad. But if you don't know the first time you do it, and then it is scary, the people start to second guess themselves. Oh, am I actually missing out on this benefit by leaving? And then you're in this awkward 3-way phone call. I'm not going to just sit here and try to sell you on it over again.
Right.
So we'll hang up, we'll talk about it, and we'll do it again. And then the next time you call, they'll be in a mandatory training, and everyone from Equitable's out that day or something like that's happened.
I've had that a couple of times too. Yeah, they're all in a training.
Yeah. And then you'll call back another time. And then mind you, you're talking about educators who are pretty much busy during the time you can call, right? So they're open from, I don't know, 8 to 6 or something like that. But what teacher is not at school already at 8 a.m. and what by the time they leave at 4:30, they probably have kids that they're doing something. So try to finding a time to make this happen.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a pain, but thank you for taking the time to get people out of that.
Yeah.
Not all heroes wear capes. Cool. Well, let's change gears a little bit. So I think we talked about the 403B stuff. We covered.
Getting too angry.
If you're a teacher listening, hopefully this is helpful.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk at all about your experience at Northwestern and some of the maybe the conflicts that exist there and what people should be aware of?
Sure. Anything specific that you're thinking of? Because it could go on for a while.
Yeah. When I think of Northwestern, I think of whole life insurance.
Sure.
I think of 20-something-year-old kids selling whole life insurance to anybody with a pulse or anyone that can fog a mirror.
Yep.
Suggesting that it is somehow a efficient investment vehicle to choose.
Yep.
You and I both know there's other options that they maybe should look at first, but I guess, what are your thoughts?
It's complicated. You have to understand the lens of which the person, as the advisor, kind of gets trained through, right? Like you and I, we started in college, like very impressionable. I grew up not poor, but not with means at all. And I didn't have a lot of expectations for a high-paying career. I was just looking for a good internship. This seemed like one. My friend got me into it. It seemed like an insider's track or something like that. And you're getting trained by somebody else who's gone through the same thing. So it's almost like this self-perpetuating cycle where there's a 24-year-old fresh out of college training me the same way he was trained and so on and so forth. And to give credit to them, I think their internship program is really strong. Like it helped a lot of us learn a lot of extremely valuable skills that I need now and then I wouldn't be at now without. How to just get in front of people, how to consistently push people to action. Because at the end of the day, our job is still in sales. You can be the best financial planner, the smartest person in the room, but if you can't move somebody to action at the end of the day, like you don't really have anything, right? So we got taught a lot of that, and they do have really good training. We were able to get our CFPs through there and stuff, but there's this weird dichotomy where it's all under the guise of holistic financial planning. We do all this stuff, but at the end of the day, the first thing we're talking about is life insurance or disability insurance. And whole life a lot is going to be a part of that plan. And the first part of the plan, even though, as we know, everybody's unique, everyone needs different things, but it always seemed that everyone needed whole life first before we talked about anything else, you know what I mean? So
when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
I think it's the same.
Yeah. And like I said, I tend not to assign a lot of the blame to the individuals because they only know what they were taught, and that was taught by the last person. And it's these monolithic companies know how to game the system and manipulate the people underneath it to sell all this stuff that they want them to sell, no matter what. And they'll always put it in some new like BS wrapper or like other reason, like why it exists, but it's always the same. So yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling, but that's I think the lens behind how we get trained and taught is really like the issue at hand, not so much because we'll all have a kind of a moment where you start listening to other research or other sources who work elsewhere, and you're like, oh, if I want to do the things that I want to do, I actually can't be here, because it's just not possible. If I want to give unbiased advice and get paid for it, just an attorney would, right? If I just want to charge like an hourly rate for advice, I can't do it under any of these places. Like I have to set up this business myself, and it's such a novel concept, right? But it's not at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's like we refer to those places like a career shop. It's the places that take on 22-year-old kids out of college and they hire them and they train them to be financial advisors. And I think every single one of those places, whether it's Axon, Northwestern, whoever else, they all have a thing. They have the product that they have a reputation for that generally these young people are pushing onto their clients. And it brings me back to the greater point is there's really no like good way to get started in this career.
No.
I think at some point you have to do that kind of thing to get to a point where eventually you have the option to leave and do your own thing.
Sure.
Just like we both did. So I'll rephrase that question is if you had a child who was getting started in this business or a niece or nephew or something like that, and they want to be a financial advisor, like where would you suggest that they start?
I hope the world it exists in a better format by the time that happens, but
Probably won't though.
yeah, because it's funny, we do get a lot of inbound emails from college students who are interested in this career path, which is great that there's actually even college programs now that exist in financial planning, which I don't think really did even 12 years ago, that'll reach out to us, say, hey, I'm interested in this career path, I'm going to be graduating or I have graduated, and I either want to pick your brain on the industry itself or see if you have any opportunities. Often the conversation goes to what type of place would you want to work for? And ideally there's a place like ours that's hiring, but there's not many of us. And even then, I don't know if that's the best way to learn, because then it's going to be almost too easy, if that makes sense, where, hey, here's this list of people that we've spent a long time really like working hard to get in front of and curate, and all the knowledge that we've learned, we've been able to impart on them, but you don't really know anything, and you're just going to get thrown in and be trusted to give advice as a 22-year-old with no experience. It's a tough ask. I think in an ideal world, there would be like externships or good programs that exist within RAs, ours, that could help train them and then take them on in a much larger capacity as their career grows. But there, like I said earlier, there is a good component of being able to move someone to action. And if you're protecting people from ever having to get told no, I don't know how good we're doing it.
Yeah, I think it's a necessary growing pain to go through what people like us went through to start their career and kind of figure it out themselves. There's really no good way to enter the business, I'm convinced of. I do hope that, again, in the future, there's more independent firms that are looking to take somebody on and maybe entering the business in more of an associate role where you're like an assistant or doing some kind of like planning exercise. I think it's a good way to do it, but it's hard. I know we get the question all the time, just like you do. I get people that reach out through LinkedIn that are college students and they want to know about our firm, what we're doing, and they're angling for the hopes of getting some kind of internship opportunity or something like that. And I try to be very upfront that we're not taking on interns. I don't have a use for an intern. But hhopefully I can answer their questions, get them pointed in the right direction. Although I think being blind to a lot of the things that we're talking about might be a necessity to make it in the business. I think it'd be really hard to go to a place like we've talked about, knowing everything that we now know, and then still be able to put your head down and grind through it and get to the other side of it.
Yeah, I think the information age and being able to even find like Reddit forums, which are probably like actually very influential in like the lack of growth in some of these like legacy firms, it's going to get harder and harder for them to find new talent. Because I think there's been a lot of studies recently on the decline in like net advisor for these firms. If you add up like retirements and people quitting and the amount of people that come in, it's a net negative for a lot of these firms, which for the first time in history. And there's mostly only growth like in the independent space. So it is happening, but they're so huge, it really doesn't make a difference, I would say, for now.
Too big to fail.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I don't know if they are.
I don't know the right answer. I think it starts with also the client, the person listening to this, challenging the person that they're working with to say, hey, actually, like, how are you compensated? What is the actual organization that you're employed by and influenced by? And it doesn't take a lot of research to uncover those types of things. And then it's pretty obvious when someone is uncomfortable and they're making things up, which a lot of people will do, is if you start pressing them on how they're compensated. Well, we're not paid directly. Like you never have to pay us. It's provided through the district or whatever. But you're going to be paying me and having to work an extra 5 years later in your career because I'm a jerk.
Yeah. It's funny, we were talking about on maybe it's another podcast episode or something else we did where no financial advisor will ever tell you that they're not a fiduciary. So if you sit in a conference room with a person they're thinking about starting a professional relationship with, and you say, hey, are you a fiduciary? They're almost definitely going to find some way to either dance around the question or say yes, even if it's not true. So it's really hard for clients, I think, to ask the right questions. So let's do that. What are 3 questions that you think every client should ask a potential new financial advisor before they engage in business with them?
I mean, I think that question is still the right one, but then the follow-up would be, okay, can you show me, like, it would be easy to like have a script of like how to know if, okay, show me the proof. Like, where is the proof that says like this person or this firm is a registered fiduciary that has no conflicts of interest, and they won't be able to show it. Because even as I would dance on the question as well, like personally speaking, as a CFP, that's how I would put the onus on that. And I'm a CFP, which has a fiduciary standard, but it's really like the penalty for not following up with fiduciary standard would be I would just remove from like the CFP board. So there's really no like legal action that's holding me to be a fiduciary. There's probably times where I didn't act as a fiduciary within Northwestern Mutual while holding myself.
The problem is you can call yourself a CFP and work at one of these firms where you're clearly not a fiduciary. So there's...
And that they're smart with that. Like Northwestern's, I think, the biggest investor in that program. They produce the most, I think, CFPs per year that exist, which on one hand, it's great that they give a lot of education. A lot of people come out of that with like designations and good experience, but it's always with this dirty trick or this like ulterior motive that because we do this, we have the most CFPs, we have the most.
CFP board just takes the money because they need the money.
They're the worst. Yeah, don't even get me started on them. That's why we can do that, because then we're going to show all these stats of how we're the most trusted. We have the most CFPs. When the CFPs that work there are no different than the other ones. They're about as dumb as the next guy. It just does. It's not hard to get. It just takes some time and a little bit of effort. It's a good way to differentiate. I would say I wouldn't work with somebody who wasn't a CFP as a client, because at least it displays some sort of effort. Like discipline, effort, and knowledge base. Yeah, so that would be the second question would be, are you a fiduciary? Are you a CFP? Or someone that's doing my plan a CFP? And the third one, I think it would be around compensation. It would have to be like, I need to be seeing how much you're compensated, which I think legally they have to. I don't know like the exact rules around that, and I don't even know if that's the right question, because they would probably lie and they would probably not show them the way they're compensated. Yeah,
it's really hard to drill down the compensation. I tried everything we do to be very transparent. It's all advisory fee based. It's all printed on the statement. And I think that's a big deal.
Sure.
But if you're trying to figure out how an advisor is compensated on their whole life policy or the annuity that they're buying, it's really convoluted and weird. And like that 5-inch stack piece of paper that you're required to sign to open an account, somewhere in there it'll tell you, but who is actually sitting there sifting through all that and trying to find the answer? It's not most clients.
Yeah, I think there almost needs to be like a watchdog or someone who volunteers to vet like these questions and say, if you're a potential client, you have concerns, like send it to me and I'll tell you one way or another. It's legitimate. That's
a business idea. You and I can start a business where we just vet financial advisors for other people.
That'd be fun. No, it's
passion project.
You do go through a phase like in our business, in our careers, where you start to figure out your identity, and then it inevitably does shift to a point where you want to bash other business models, other advisors. And I think that starts when you break off the first time and you want to talk about how everyone else is bad and you're good. But it does get to a point where that becomes counterproductive, and I think starts to hold less weight and makes you seem like kind of petty or not professional. It's a hard balance to be able to speak up against this type of stuff, but we've been prioritizing not in certain cases just to not seem like that's the only thing we talk about.
Right. It is a slippery slope. It's tempting to talk about. It can be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe off camera we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, it's the easiest way to, it's the least path of resistance. But there comes a point where you have to be like, okay, sure, all these places aren't good, but why are you worth working with? Do you have any value, or is your value talking about crap about somebody else?
It's a little bit like politics. Maybe stop talking about the other guy and tell me what you're going to do to make my life better.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so easy to talk crap about somebody who can't defend themselves, but at a certain point you have to display like why you're worth this fee, which is, I guess, the progression we're looking for is someone saying, okay, like a lot of our new potential clients say, okay, here's the planning fee that I have to pay out of pocket. Here's the annual like projected asset management fee, totals up to this. Why are you worth this? Yeah. At least that's a good step that they can easily add that up and say, here's what I'm going to pay. Why is it worth that?
Right.
So
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. We are getting to the end of our time here, so I want to cover one
so
more.
fast.
I know. We respect our listeners' time.
Only 3 takes too.
Yeah. One more quick topic. So we talked a lot about maybe the advisor at the beginning of their career getting started in these companies. And I think you and I both had an experience where we got to a certain point, however many years in, where you start to figure it out. You realize some of the conflicts that exist, some of the reasons why you maybe don't want to affiliate with these companies, maybe ways it's holding you back, or there's opportunity to do your own thing. And I know that you and I probably both have a lot of friends that are still at these kinds of companies, and they're good people. We're friends with them.
Yeah.
But what do you think it is that holds advisors back from taking that leap? And to me, at some point, it's like you either don't know or when you don't care enough to make a shift.
Yeah. So
Which is worse.
Yeah, I thought about this a lot. A couple things. I think the first issue I think is being able to take a step back outside of yourself. And I did the wrong thing, but I can't keep doing the wrong thing because there is a shift that happens. It happened to me, probably happened to you, where you're building a business, you're bringing on new people, and you're like, I'm promising these people things that I don't believe in. You know what I mean? And then that starts to put into question all the other things you've done for the past, however, to me, it was like past 8 years. Okay, have I done the wrong thing for the past 8 years? So I think there's a lot of burying your head in the sand a little bit of, you can't possibly go out and get new clients or work with people like actively knowing you're doing the wrong thing. There's just like a disassociation you have to make.
You have to believe in what you're preaching.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm more of like an empathetic person, so maybe it happens to me more, and I'm sure there's like a lot of sociopathic type of individuals who work.
Your words, not mine.
Yeah. But yeah, there comes a point where most people probably have that realization of, oh, I either have to admit that I'm doing the wrong thing or I got to move on and just not believe that. So that's the one. You're so entrenched, I think, too. Inertia is a big thing, right? We talked earlier about just being able to get on the phone with Equitable and move money away from them. Now you're talking about moving potentially hundreds of relationships away from something. It's just like a fear of, it was really scary. Like to be able to, my experience was, okay, I think we had 600 clients and we're identifying, I think, 60 that we're going to bring with us. And we had these non-solicit agreements, but we left on kind of good terms where I said, we can't sell insurance anymore. We're not licensed to. We're a fiduciary now. We're not going to be hurting that relationship. So Northwestern let us pick who we called and didn't bother us about it, and got to assign them to different people we did trust. But yeah, one afternoon you're calling 60 people who's like your livelihood's on the line with their responses. It's a scary thing to say, hey, I'm doing this. I know you trust me. Hopefully my brand or my knowledge is more important to you than this other brand, but we're transitioning now and take all the time you need, but also please decide right now.
Please hurry up.
Yeah. And here's the process. And it's this whole new world of, you got new technology, new platforms, you're trying to move them over. For us, there was this huge delay where my business partner, Jack, he was born, his name was Jeremy, and then they changed his name when he was 1.
Okay.
So all of his birth certificate information says one thing, all of his registration with the SEC says another thing, and they just couldn't, like, common sense died.
Oh, it's super frustrating.
And they wouldn't let us open like a firm account with the new place we were going to be moving money to it delayed it like a month, I think. So not only you're doing this stuff, and then we had all these people who agreed, but then we're like, hey, we can't move it yet because of this stupid thing that's happening. Yeah, and then there's a little bit of doubt that starts to creep in. So there's a huge risk you're taking when you do it, but it's really not that difficult. A lot of people think about like legal compliance, other expenses. It's so much cheaper to run our business outside of these larger firms. So they take so much from us under the guise of like them helping us. Sure. Like my rent across the street from here was for a space like this big was like $1,800 a month or something like that. And then we got an entire office building for $2,200 a month. Like the price per square foot went down by 80%. So there's just so many things that I think people just don't know what they don't know. You get told by compliance, by other people, like how difficult compliance is when you do it on your own. Wow, it's so valuable. At this place, I can never replace it. It's not hard at all. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but I think more people are going to be advocating for it.
Yeah,
so.
I hope in the future more people are willing to make that leap of faith and get out on their own and start doing the right thing.
I think so. And that's something, like I said, we're going to be working harder on this year and next year, is just advocating for the people in our space more and making more people in the Rochester area at least know about it.
Very good. Cool. Chris, thanks for being here. This was fun.
Yeah.
And this has been the Roadmap to Retirement podcast. Thank you again to nice people at Strangebird for these delicious beers.
We paid for them.
Paid full price.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy, results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Alexander Neri. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Alexander Neri or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Alexander Neri and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.